I recently took an IQ test, and this is an example of one of the questions from the IQ test. For those who are listening and can't see it, it's about very quickly recognizing patterns and having rotational spatial awareness. The questions get progressively harder, but they are all similar. You are quickly figuring out the correct pattern within the shapes or numbers and then answering multiple choice questions. And as I was doing this, it kept complimenting me. Halfway through, it said my IQ was 87% higher than the population of the United States, and I was only halfway through. I was like, stop it. You must say this to all the boys who take your IQ test. I said as it told me I was in the top 5% of logic. It was really building me up, but when we got to the results page, I had to pay to see the score. And I said, no thank you. And so I took the test on a different site, and the same thing happened. I had to pay to see the score. And so I didn't. So what is my IQ? I don't know. And truthfully, I don't care. See, I already went into the test feeling like IQ tests were bullshit, but the test was even lamer than I had built it up in my head. Because I don't really believe it measures an overall intelligence at all. And with a pay to see results, it bragging me up while taking the test was trying to incentivize me to pay to want to see. But you hear people brag about IQ. It's treated as if it's this number to measure just how smart you are. And it is. But also it's not. Yes, it measures how good you are at that specific task. But intelligence can't just be wrapped up into one category when there are actually multiple intelligences. Now, this isn't a new hypothesis. I didn't come up with this. It's unlikely that you or I have ever had an original idea in our lifetime. Hinduism discusses more than one form of intelligence, and that's been around a lot longer than my existence. A book I tried to read but couldn't get into called Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences by Howard Gardner. That's also talking about multiple intelligences, and that came out before I was born. I'm not using either as a source. I'm just stating that other people have had this thought before me, I'm sure. I'm just rambling off the old noggin here, but I also believe there are multiple intelligences. Let's say there were 3 men. The first had studied planes all his life, but never flown one. The second studied planes enough to become a pilot, and might not know as much about every minute detail, but he does know how to fly the plane. And the third guy fixes the plane. He has never flown or even read a book about the plane, but he has enough experiences working on them that he knows the ins and outs of how they function. To me, these are all different. And how can you quantify which person is smarter when it comes to planes? I don't know that you can. I'd also argue that knowledge and intelligence are different categories. The guy who's only read about the planes may know a lot, but put into a situation where he needs to fly the plane, he might be quite bad at it, until he gains that intelligence that would come from practicing. You don't become street smart by reading a book on how to become street smart. You become street smart by living on the streets. I've met a dude who can't read, and he's an incredibly handy mechanic. Does that mean he's stupid? I know a dude who dropped out of high school and became a computer hacker, but because he doesn't have a high school degree or diploma, he's for some reason not smart enough for a lot of jobs I know that he could do. That's bullshit. Crows are one of the only animals that can use tools to achieve their goals. Barry the dog knows based on alarm sounds when it's time to go outside and when it's time to eat. And a rock is an inanimate object, yet all of them would have the same IQ on an IQ test because they wouldn't understand how to do it. But yet, even with these same IQ scores, I can tell Barry is smarter than a rock, and that he's a very, very good boy. He's a very, very, very good boy. So what good is an IQ test then, if it doesn't actually measure how smart you are? It's not really good for much of anything other than testing that specific thing and for bragging rights. But there is more intelligences than that. How do we even know how many there are? I don't know. Is intuition a form of intelligence? Maybe. I find that I am relatively smart when it comes to improvising problem solving. It wasn't something I knew until recently when I was helping someone with their house and found myself MacGyvering tools out of nothing that would efficiently solve the problem at hand. But I also know a lot of my thinking is more outside the box. When I was first shown a Rubik's Cube, my first thought on how to solve it was to remove all the stickers and replace them in the color-coordinated patterns, rather than to just solve it like it's meant to be solved. This way of thinking is one big reason I don't usually like video game puzzles, because the way I think of fixing it doesn't work, because I have to do it the way the game intended. But I know a dude who's great at puzzles, not just puzzle games like Tetris and Dr. Mario, but also Chinese checkers. Games meant to be played within very strict confines of rules, thinking very much so in the box. That isn't to say my way is better or that mine is more creative. It isn't. There can still be an artistry within the confines of the rules. What I am saying, though, is that our initial approach to a puzzle is different, and I believe both are valid and both are different intelligences. When I play video games, a lot of the language of them transfers over. Once you understand how first-person shooters work, they all work similarly, even with their differences. Same with fighting games, beat-em-ups, platformers, etc. As someone who plays a lot of games, I can pick up games rather quickly. If I jump from an RPG to a platformer, I'll pick it up quick. Whereas someone who doesn't play as much games and as much genres might struggle a lot to understand how all the mechanics work. This is not to say they are dumb. This is to say I'm more intelligent when it comes to the language of how games are played. And this is a learned experience. So learned experiences, life experiences is yet another intelligence. And also sometimes biology is a factor. Some people are born with learning disabilities. Some people are born with photographic memory. There can be many factors involved, including how left or right brain you are. And speaking of brains, brain size does not indicate intelligence either. You being a big-brained fella means very little. Whales have the largest brains on Earth, and they're not considered our smartest animal, or even second, or even third. Perhaps a better way would be like brain size relative to size of body, but I would still have to look up how much that would matter. And just because biologically you are very similar doesn't mean that you will have the same intelligences either. I don't know that I've met a pair of identical twins who I think are equally smart in all aspects. I know a dude who drives me nuts. He's one of the dumbest people I've ever met socially. He couldn't pick up on anything ever. His awareness is zero. Everyone around him could be dying in a fire and he'd be laughing at a TikTok. But if for some reason we were together in war and I needed someone to crack an enemy code, there is no one I'd rather have by my side. I guess my main point is the IQ test is a stupid test. I'm not sure exactly what kind of test we need or how many intelligences there are, but I do know in order to have a better, more accurate test of intelligence, we need to test a lot more than that. And I'm not saying we can or will ever find a perfect way to test intelligences, but I do know it is not the IQ test. There's a parable, I don't remember where I heard it from, and I couldn't find it online either. I honestly think I'm just mixing various memories of different fables, because I found variations of kind of the same thing, but not the exact same thing, so I'm just giving my version of what I think I remember, but I can't find. There is this monkey and a fish in a school together, and they're being graded by how well they can climb a tree. Obviously, the monkey is great while the fish is not, but then it is switched, and they are being judged by how well they swim, and obviously the fish swims better than the monkey. The point being, they are both gifted in their own ways, and I think intelligence is like that. It's diverse, and you can be smart in one category and dumb in another, and the diversity of intelligence is a good thing. If for some reason I was like the leader of a country or something and got to handpick people, I'd want people who are all smart at different things. Someone who negotiates well, someone who's smart with economics, stuff like that. Like imagine being a world leader and hiring an anti-vax guy with worms in their brain to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. That would be so stupid. Can you imagine how dumb you'd have to be to do that? Also, let me be clear. This isn't me saying everyone is smart in their own way. Nope, I'm not saying that. I think most people are absolute idiots and that's not a good thing at all. I want people to get smarter in all intelligences they can. Now, I would be down to attempt to make a better IQ test, but it would need to be just more than me making it. I'd want a very diverse team of intelligent people to help create it so we could cover as many aspects as possible. And I'd have to do more research to know how I would go about officially replacing this IQ test, and then figure out how to get this team, and also figure out if I'm even qualified to be on this team or should have someone else replace me. I don't know. If I end up doing anything with this, I will make up a follow-up video, but I just wanted to bitch about IQ tests. I wonder why they even exist. Like, I should look into that too.